Hi, Sister Gopi. Good to have you and good to have you met after so long. But I had the great fortune of meeting Sister Gopi since I was 13 years old. So I used to be part of the Brahma Kumari's International Youth Wing. So every December we meet at the headquarters in Mount Abu for the youth retreat, which was led by Sister Gopi. So that really helped us to discuss certain issues we have while growing up, and also putting us in the right path and to balance our spiritual, or that time I was studying and then I was doing even university and then I moved on to a corporate ladder. So that all put us in the right path. So when we used to be meeting almost every year for like 10 to 11 years at a stretch. So today's dialogue I've been asked to do was something very interesting on mobile, social media and screen time, right? So if you look at the stats in Sri Lanka, we are about 20 million population, out of which I believe we are hitting about 15 million active internet users, and out of which about 50 to 60% are active on social media. That's about, we're looking at about 7 to 8 million active social media users in Sri Lanka out of the 20 million population, right? And if you look at our mobile penetration, it's more than 150%, right? So that's where Sri Lanka is growing. But if you look at just a few years ago, it was not even 50%, it was less than 4 to 5 million internet users. But with pandemic and everything, there's a lot of access to the internet. So, but when we were small, when we were growing up, our parents used to go out and shout and call us back inside the homes because we're always playing outside. But today things have changed with our younger generations. They're mostly glued to the phone, and we have to tell them go play, go socialize, go meet people, right? So things have changed, but we know there's a pros and cons with social media, with mobile, with screen time. So on a spiritual point of view, especially when you talk about mental health, what do you think is the right balance? How do we go about it as we're growing? It might be applicable to me, to somebody who's having a kid, or somebody who's growing up with school and with work. So what's your take on that?
Thank you. I think this is a very important question for our community at this point in time. First of all, I want to start by saying that social media is a facility. It's a tool, and depends on the mindset of the user. It can be used productively, constructively, or it can be used destructively. And somehow we've kind of found ourselves in a world where, ironically, the purpose of this tool was to help us socially connect with each other, create connections, make connections. And yes, it's a very advantageous tool to learn new information, to join groups, to create social causes, support social causes. But ironically, excessive use of this tool has led us to issues with depression, anxiety, and actually statistics show that excessive use of things like Facebook, Instagram is creating more loneliness for people. So I'm just trying to understand the effect of social media on the brain. I know that studies have shown that the same activities in the brain, the same centers in the brain are activated as those of drug addicts. And this is what it becomes. When something becomes an addiction, that's when it becomes detrimental. And maybe a lot of it is the contributing lifestyle. People who don't have time because they're working, so it's easy to stick a child behind a television. It's easy to give a child an iPad. It's easy to give a child a phone because you don't have enough time to socially interact. This tool cannot replace human interaction, because human interaction generates a physiological reaction, hormones that make you feel happy, serotonin, oxytocin when you're being hugged by somebody, and it creates a sense of well-being and your ability to tolerate, have patience. It triggers your value system as well when you're relating to somebody in life. But when you're looking at a phone all day, this thing is dead. And eventually it starts to have an effect on your brain where it deadens your whole approach to things. So I think that when we first understand that this is just a tool, right? That's the first place to start. So what do I need to use this tool for in my life? That's important to realize. First of all, I think for me anyway, I do not bring this tool at the food table, right? Far away. In the morning, I've invested in an alarm clock. So my mobile phone is outside the room. And I wake up by my alarm clock so that when I wake up in the morning, I have some space to actually, for myself, to feel, think about how I feel, think about my day, think about what I want. And you know, science has told us that the first 10 to 15 minutes of waking up, whatever you think and feel sets your mood for the whole day. So if you're plugging your mind into 12,000 social feeds, you're literally giving your power away at the beginning of the day. So very important to put it outside your room. Thirdly, I think it's important to understand its purpose for work. You know, we do need it for work purposes. So managing your work time with it, giving yourself a certain period of time to actually do the work and then put it away. I mean, you know, one of the things that I've recently understood is that excessive use of social media has created something we call FOMO. I mean, FOMO's been around a long time, the fear of missing out. You know, where people think, oh, something better is happening, maybe I'm missing out. So they become compulsive slaves to their phones, basically. And, you know, at a very deep level, I think that excessive use is feeding the identity crisis. Because people anyway suffer from a degree of insecurity. And what happens is when you're on social media reading stuff about people's life here, there and everywhere, and then you're comparing it to your life. And so you feel inadequate. So it can create that sense of isolation and inadequacy that further, if you like, erodes our self-respect. And then what do young people do? They end up creating avatars. So they're one thing in the online world and another thing in the offline world. And this dissonance, it affects their self-respect. Because how do you live a life of integrity if you're showing one face to the world, but in reality, you're something else? So I think that these are touching on issues that have existed before this tool came into place. And somehow, instead of this tool empowering us, it's almost like the weakness has grabbed the tool and made us weaker. Does that make sense? So I do think, I mean, there's so many things around digital detox at this point in time, you know, and so many practices, but limiting, this is a tool. That's all it is. So use it when you need it, the rest of the time, put it away. And it begs the question, what is your purpose in life? If you're spending all day on your phone, it means you haven't asked yourself that deeper question. And so I think it's really important, especially for young people. It's not easy when you're young to suddenly say, I know what my purpose is in life. It doesn't work like that. You have to actually act, you have to interact, you have to go out, you have to meet people, you have to do volunteer work. You have to start flexing your muscles everywhere before you realize where your specialities lie. So that human interaction, go out and volunteer, sit down, take a notebook and pen, have an appreciation journal of what you've learned today. All of these things, they build a sense of self-awareness that's bigger than the mobile phone. Your mobile phone does not give you your self-respect.
Absolutely. So I think one of the takes is when you start your day, I think it's a very valid point. You invest in an alarm clock, right? Not on your phone, because naturally what happens is when you get onto the phone, your alarm rings, you switch it off, and then you see a series of messages and social feeds and all of that, right? And that's where your thoughts are. So I think it's a very valid point. First thing in the morning, when you wake up, stay away from your phone. That time for yourself, I think that will make a whole difference for the entire day for yourself. So having said that, Also, can you just touch a little bit about meditation, especially how do you do that? Because today's problem is, I know it is an excuse, but we always say we don't have time, right? But we do commute, we travel, we get into meetings. There are moments for ourselves. But how can you take a quick break, switch off and switch on, but at the same time, have that connection with something which can give that boost for the rest of the day?
First of all, I think it's very important to understand our relationship with time. People have a very distorted view of time. Some people are afraid they never have enough time. Yeah? Some people have too much time, they don't know what to do with it. So our relationship with time is a bit off. And with the advent of social media, what's happened is that our illusion of time, that we feel time, we've become impatient with time, I remember when the texting first started on WhatsApp, and somebody's texting me from Australia, and it's nice to text back and get instant replies, and you're like, wow, this is great. It's like almost having an instant conversation. And then halfway through that conversation, I needed to go to the washroom. I came back and there was like a gazillion messages saying, where are you? What are you doing? And I was only gone 2 minutes. And I realized even for a nature break, 2 minutes feels like ages. And I thought, wow, this has completely distorted our sense of time. Things don't move that fast in the real world, So I think that's really important, to look at my relationship with my thoughts and time. And then secondly, managing your thoughts is crucial in managing your time. And with the practice of meditation, all of us have spaces in the day where we have a cup of tea, we have a cup of coffee, we drink something, or we just sit for a few moments to relax. It's very, very important in those few moments that you breathe, because deep breathing helps to start bringing your attention into this moment now, right? What happens when we get busy, our attention gets hijacked. And when your attention gets hijacked, you feel torn in 20 different directions. So when you sit peacefully, whatever you're doing, having a cup of tea, drinking some water, just sitting, breathe deeply, at least 3 deep breaths to bring your attention into this moment now. Just that will start to ground you, and deep breathing starts to calm the mind down. And then just take up maybe the quality of peace. Sometimes I've just sat quietly. I've had a few moments, maybe sitting opposite the ocean, and I'll just look at the ocean and I'll just say to myself, I am peace. I am peace. And I'll let that become a mantra for a minute or so. And as I do that, it has an incredible effect on my mind and physiology. It's very simple, but it's about your attention, bringing your attention back into the present moment. Especially when we take these moments to self-reflect or meditate, is that when we're bringing our attention back to ourselves, there is a law: wherever attention goes, energy flows. You are actually starting the process of re-energizing yourself. Otherwise, what happens when you stay in a state where your attention is constantly distracted, you start burning out. Because there's so much multitasking you can do, there's so much of that you can do. So taking these breaks in between, even for a minute, 2 minutes, actually starts the process of energizing yourself.
So, thank you, Sister Gopi, for answering some of the questions I had asked you. I think it was a very good dialogue we had. Hopefully, we'll see you again in another series of episodes. Thank you.